Did the Carolina Panthers trade with the Chicago Bears just signal who the number one pick of the draft is going to be? What does DJ Moore's future look like in Chicago with Justin Fields? And is there another breakout receiver coming out of 2023 in Moore's new division? Plus, a winner of more than 24 FFPC and KFFSC leagues. Reid joins us to talk about the secrets in order to successfully draft early, whether Jonathan Taylor has become a bargain in FFPC drafts this year, and much more. We've got a great show for you. I'm Eric Balkman. Farrell Elliott is here. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Under pressure, I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations, all you Balkaholics and Farrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, we're going to talk about who the Robin is to Chris Olave's Batman in New Orleans, whether early FFPC drafters are taking Breece Hall a little too early, and then a champ of more than 24 FFPC and KFFSC leagues, Reid, is going to talk Devontae Smith. He's going to talk TJ Hawkinson and much more. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can do so at HSFF Hour, that's the show, at Eric Balkman, that's me, and always learn more about Farrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com, and they've been off and running for quite a while now, ladies and gentlemen. Check that out for more drafts for your drafting pleasure. You can follow Jay on Twitter at Packers153. You can post on our Facebook page at facebook.com/HSFF Hour. And you can also email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. We do have some emails that we're going to get to coming up later on in the program. If you do have any questions for us and you're just watching this right now for the first time, send them in now. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, all the tweets, all the emails in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. Hey, you can win $25,000 right now in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. Just $125 to join at myffpc.com. Or if you want to get in at a little bit lower of an entry fee and still play in a big tournament, you can do that. $35 will get you entry into the FFPC Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball Tournament as well. And the grand prize there, $5,000. Now, both of these tournaments are have been off and running for probably, I want to say, a little bit under 2 months right now. They're going to conclude on April 27th. So whatever drafts we have going at that point, they're cut off when the NFL draft starts. They're going to follow best ball slim rules, no kickers, no defenses, 20-round draft, 14-week regular season, and single-week elimination playoffs from weeks 15 through 17 before we crown a champion at the end of week 17. If you want to draft live, we have 30-second clocks instead of 60-second clocks per pick. If you want to draft slow, we have 2 hours per pick and 6 hours per pick. That's available myffpc.com. And while you're there, let me tell you about all the great Dynasty Orphan teams we have there right now. A lot of these are regular priced, but many of them are reduced price. Now, the regular price ones are in a little bit better shape, or you can look at the reduced price ones, which still could be in as good a shape, but the owner is definitely motivated to move. I brought this up on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show last night on the Better Sports Network with Shane Hallam was my guest, and I said, look, divorces happen, marriages happen, new babies happen, new families happen, new jobs happen, everything happens. And sometimes the owners of these dynasty teams give up their rights to these dynasty teams, and they're still very good teams. And you can get in and cash in on a pretty good team for a discounted price right now and still be able to compete for a championship in 2023. Not a lot of places out there can you do that, but you can do that at myffpc.com. As far as the video and the stream goes tonight, remember to like this video, subscribe to the FFPC YouTube channel at FFPC Fantasy, and then, of course, comment on the video tonight, share the video with all your friends and not friends, and get notified of any future broadcasts that we have coming up. We had a first last night. for the first time ever, the Better Sports Network High Stakes Fantasy Football Show not only aired on the BSN app, which is free in Google Play and the App Store, but it also aired on the FFPC YouTube channel, FFPC Twitter, and FFPC Facebook, all those as well. So a variety of ways that you can get involved with the program. Shane Hallam's a show with me last night is available at FFPC Fantasy on YouTube. 2 hours, a lot of Dynasty stuff there. So if you're a Dynasty player, highly encourage you to check that out, as Shane Hallam is an expert in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Want to bring in expert number one, ladies and gentlemen. You follow him on Twitter at KFFSC Official. You check out the KFFSC, the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. It is the incomparable Farrell Elliott. Farrell, welcome back, man. I missed you so much.
Oh, buddy, it's been a long time. I have missed you too. It's been 2 weeks of missing them, and then we tried doing one when I was on the road, and we had just a poor connection. So, yeah, I'm ready to talk football with you, and you've done first ever things over on the Better Sports Network. I'm damn glad we've got Jay Reid tonight to kind of pick this show up. That's what we need over here.
Yes, we do. And before I forget, Farrell, 2 weeks ago, Dave Terpoli stood in for you, co-hosted the show. Our guest was Charlie McGuire, our mutual friend, and he told me to wish you a hello because he missed you on the podcast. But he definitely did a great job, and it would have been great to have you on. But we'll have Charlie on, I'm sure, again.
Please.
Another time. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, he's ready right now, and we are in the rare situation to have a Friday news dump, a massive Friday news dump that affects dynasty leagues, redraft leagues, in the form of a trade for the number one pick in the NFL draft. And Farrell and I can't handle it by ourselves. So we brought in the big guns, ladies and gentlemen. You've seen him on these airwaves before. He's a winner of, and again, I'm pretty conservative when I say this, more than 24 FFPC and Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship leagues, ranging from main events all the way up to big paybacks, so on and so forth. He's done it at every level. You follow him on Twitter at Packers153. Please welcome back to the show, Mr. Jay Reid. Jay, welcome in, man. Happy Friday to you, dude.
Hey, Balky, how you doing? Back to the beard, I see.
Yes, back to the beard. Somebody asked me about this the other day, and I said, and I think I said this last year, I think by Kentucky it's probably going to be shaved again, but we'll see. We'll see how hot and itchy it gets throughout the summer. You know, the great thing about living in Wisconsin, Jay, is like we have a 10-month winter up here. So it's always protecting my face from all the biting winds. We got all this heavy snow today. It's crazy. So eventually we're going to hit 50 degrees. And then at that point, I may shave it off. I may not. We'll see what happens.
So you hibernate in Wisconsin in the winter and clean up for Kentucky in August,
yes.
Right?
It's like Kentucky. I'm telling you, man,
work.
like Kentucky is such great weather. In fact, Farrell, I may just move down to Louisville one of these years because I love it every time I come down there. And then I get to Vegas in in early September, beg your pardon, and I'm just sweating buckets. I can't get used to that heat out there. It's so and that's why I'm either working the entire time, or like we did like 11 hours of Better Sports Network radio out there, or I'm at video poker. Like if I go outside, I'm like, to hell with this. I got to get back inside and talk fantasy football with somebody.
You come to the planet Hollywood, and you do not leave the planet, Balky. You stay on the planet and enjoy everything that there is to have there. Jay Reid will stay on the planet because Jay Reid never leaves the draft room. That's one thing you can count on. Where's Jay? Well, he's in the draft room.
I'm in the draft
room. In the
room.
hallway outside the draft room. Those are the two places that he's in Vegas. He doesn't
How
even
are
know
you,
where
Farrell?
the room is. He doesn't.
How are you, Farrell? I haven't seen you in a month since Super Sunday.
Buddy, Super Sunday was fantastic, and your drafting was similar. It was great to have you down here, and you and Scott Connor had a really wonderful run. And
we did. We
missed you, and I hate to have to wait to August to see you in person again, but we will get you back down here.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Farrell.
You know, Jay had some interesting picks because I know, Jay, you were in a draft that I was in for the Super Sunday when I was drafting online. And you had some picks in that draft, you and Scott did, that I want to touch on that coming up later on in the show. But before we get to that, guys, we have to talk about the elephant in the room right now. We had a massive trade go down. I want to say, roughly 6 hours ago, maybe 5 hours ago. Ian Rappaport has reported that the Carolina Panthers are now the owners of the number one pick in the NFL draft in exchange for DJ Moore, the number 9 overall pick, a 2023 second rounder, a 2024 first rounder, and a 2025 second rounder. All right, so let's talk about this. Farrell, I'm going to throw it to you first. Frank Reich never could figure out quarterback in Indianapolis. Went through Phillip Rivers, Jacoby Brissett, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan. Now he's in Carolina, and he gets to pick his quarterback, right? Now, a lot of people had Bryce Young as the de facto favorite to be chosen first in the draft. That has shifted. I look at the DraftKings odds within the last 2 hours. CJ Stroud is now minus 160 to be the first overall pick. Bryce Young has slipped to plus 150. Anthony Richardson still obviously in play after his big workout in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine. You look at this for Carolina. Yeah, they don't have Moore anymore. We'll talk about Terrace Marshall and Tommy Tremble and some of these other guys in Carolina, Farrell, but is it Stroud now? Is that what we're thinking? Are we thinking that Stroud is now going to be the new quarterback for the Carolina Panthers?
It's desperation is now what we're thinking. You want to talk about the head coach. I want to talk about the general manager. Scott Fritter, he needs to deliver something. So he's going to deliver with the first pick in the draft. Obviously, he trusts what he sees at the combine, what his scouts are getting back to. I don't know which one of these guys he's going to pick. And he hasn't been particularly successful with picking quarterbacks in the free agency or in the draft. And there's a lot of capital that's been spent at the position. Now you give up your best receiver and you try to build a future around a promising rookie quarterback. We'll see if it works. Rookie coach, rookie quarterback, desperate general manager, not a winning and dispatching your 2 best offensive players, one at midseason last year and now DJ Moore. One, Jay Reid said he came to the draft a couple years ago with the goal was to get all the Moores, and now the most impressive Moore is in Chicago. So I'm uncertain which player it will be, and that player will have a heavy burden to carry on his back when he gets there.
So Jay, when we look at this Carolina depth chart, I kind of teased it a little bit. There's no DJ Moore there anymore. You're looking at guys like Laviska Shenault and Rashard Higgins, Terrace Marshall. Any of those guys look tempting to you? I know a lot of people are drafting best ball teams right now, but you look at those guys are probably going to be catching balls, you would think, from a rookie quarterback this season. Is there any love for Marshall, Shenault, or anybody else on your end here?
Not much, Balky. I think these guys are going to drop now, especially with this trade with DJ. I mean, DJ opened it up for a lot of those guys too during the game, and he's not there anymore. So someone's going to have to step up there, and I'm not quite sure who it is. I mean, for me, when it comes to fantasy football, I mean, these guys are going to drop like a rock for me. Maybe some fillers, add some depth later in the draft in the later rounds, but I would not be targeting any receivers for the Panthers right now. Unless they draft, a good rookie wide receiver, someone maybe like Jordan Addison out of USC. If they can grab him, that's something, maybe in a mid-round situation you may want to go for. But other than that, I'm off of those receivers from Carolina.
We'll also look, Jay, for them to acquire cleverly placed acquisition of free agent wide receivers, maybe even somebody like an Adam Thielen,
one of my favorite players too.
The guys that you can get at a bargain to come in here and help a young quarterback, because they're not on this roster. But that's where Federer can show that he's got a master plan here, is to put together a group of receivers that can transition over the first couple of years and help a young quarterback get started. So there's hope here, and we're just beginning to see. He gave away a lot of draft capital, so he's got to look really, really smart in free agency. So let's see what happens.
Jay, let's pose this to you. So DJ Moore, obviously the biggest human piece of this trade, obviously, well, really the only human piece of the trade. Moore goes to Chicago now. So the Bears now will have not only DJ Moore, but Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, and then Cole Kmet, who I think is going to have a pretty successful season as well. It's looking pretty good for Justin Fields here. DJ Moore is under contract now through the next 3 seasons in Chicago, and he gets his best quarterback that he's ever had in his career now in Chicago. Jay, before this trade, He was going at the 502 at wide receiver 21. I got to believe he's going to move up in the FFPC Never Too Early draft. And by the way, that ADP is courtesy of Darren Armani, fantasymojo.com, at Fantasy Mojo on Twitter. We love him. Anytime he's the godfather of the pros versus Joes. Anytime we cite ADP, it's always coming from him. So, Jay, you look at DJ Moore here, wide receiver 21 at the 502. At that point in FFPC drafts, you probably want to be in business with him. How high up does he have to go before you're like, you know what, I'm out on him?
You talk about DJ Moore moving up, and
Exactly.
also, Justin Fields as well. I mean, Fields now has a number one target, number one wide receiver on his team. I know he tends to tuck the ball and run it a lot. He did that last year, maybe less this year with DJ Moore, but also DJ Moore is going to open up lanes too for Justin Fields to maybe run even when he has to. He'll have the lanes to do it because he's going to open up the secondary, and I think it'll make all those other wide receivers you mentioned better as well. DJ is going to move up without a doubt. I think Justin Fields, for me, before this trade, I was going to wait on him. I would like have a Burrow or a Herbert before I even think about Justin Fields. But now I don't think you can pass up Fields with this blockbuster trade. I mean, it helps tremendously. He's got all the pieces now. I think he's got the major piece now for him to succeed in this offense.
Farrell, let me ask you this, and I think I know how you're going to answer, but I want to ask you anyway. Who won the trade? Which GM won this trade? And I think you're going to say Chicago because, you think about this too. The Bears already had a ton of cap money to spend this year, right? And they already had a really good, solid cache of draft capital to give up to make a move like this. And now the recipient of more draft capital too. Man, you got to be loving Ryan Pohl's life right now with all the ammo he has.
Yeah, he is the toast of Rush Street tonight. He comes out of this looking like a treasure bounty of draft picks, and that's what he's got. And he can prove as he grows into this job what he does with those draft picks and what he does with those salary cap to elevate this team. Now, in the case of Mr. Fields, you've got to love what he brings to the game. It's still about his feet. With DJ Moore, I think you've got to remember what you're dealing with when we're in playoff season with the wind and the rain and what you have in Chicago there. Those are all lesser concerns. When you're drafting players, you want to get a very talented player, but there are some things that December football in Chicago can sometimes not be a pretty thing, and that's when Fields' game becomes elevated with his feet. But yeah, this is all a great, wonderful.
Good day to be a Bears fan,
yes,
for sure. So Farrell, let me keep this with you here, and I noticed this as Buck Reesing on Twitter told us today that the Titans have released their center Ben Jones out of Georgia, who I remember when he was drafted, I'm like, man, that guy's going to be a good pro, and he was. I mean, he's been there for forever. He was re-signed to a new 2-year deal this offseason, but now in his age 34 season, he's going to be playing with someone else. He was a Pro Bowler last year. It's $3.7 million savings in cap space. But I look at the drumbeat, and maybe I missed somebody else too, but I know Taylor Lewan, one of the tackles for Tennessee, is no longer there as well. I know that there have been reports that I think it's Rand Carthon, right, the new GM in Tennessee, has been shopping Derrick Henry. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but there's been reports that he is. He's going at the 208 in the FFPC Never Too Early tournament. Farrell, losing 2 offensive linemen, plus your new GM might be shopping you. I don't want to be in business with him in the mid to late second round. Your thoughts on Derrick Henry this year?
Oh, let's let him drop and take him in the early part of the third round. Matter of fact, Jay, I got on the clock today. My first pick in the FFPC today, the number 3 pick in the Never Too Early, and I took Austin Eckler. And just let Derrick Henry go ahead and drop to me. I'll be very glad to take him. Rand Carthon's a young man that I admire a lot. He only got to play 9 or 10 games in his shortened, truncated NFL career. His father, and both of you guys will remember this, but Jay, being an Eagles fan, will remember it even more. His father, Maurice Carthon, was a 7-8 year NFL vet with the Giants, 2 Super Bowls out of Arkansas State. I'm dating myself a little bit here, but that's my first year's career as an agent, and I recruited him. And he didn't sign with me, but he was a good friend throughout both of our careers. And Maurice is raised a fine young man and ran. And he's 41 years old. He was raised largely in the 49ers way of doing business. But I would caution Rand that one of the things that you must be, you've got to be able to stand prosperity. And he's in a situation that's very prosperous with this offensive lineman. With this running back, it doesn't matter what kind of offensive lineman you have at the Tennessee Titans, as long as they can just get in the way, that's good enough. Run blocking is all about attitude. That's the easy part of the game. When you got Derrick Henry behind you, and Derrick Henry, even at 29 years old, has not shown me that he's slowing down any. There's nothing in his game that makes me think that he's not going to be as good next year as he was at previous times in his career. So I'm looking forward. From a fantasy football perspective, you can think of the cushy places that Derrick Henry could go and play. Wouldn't it look beautiful if he were to line up in the backfield at Miami? Or how great would it be to maybe Jay can think of somewhere, but how great would it be to see him in an offense that is clicking on with a quarterback that can throw the ball down the field, and where there might be an opening at the running back position. So I think that with Derrick Henry, you should draft him and draft him aggressively. Don't turn away from him while everybody else is running from him. Jump into that situation. And I tell you, I would hate to be Coach Vrabel, and I would and to watch some of the elements of the team that's slipping away from me. I might try to nip this in my bud with my new general manager and keep Mr. Henry in the house.
Jay, for the first time last year, I drafted Derrick Henry in the first round. I can't remember last time. I don't think I ever drafted Derrick Henry in the first round before. I don't have to draft him in the first round this year because he's not going there. I don't know where you would target him, but your thoughts on what kind of output you're expecting from Henry this season. Again, as we said, no Jones, no Lewan. I don't know if there's going to be more changes on the offensive line, but this is not your older brother's Tennessee Titans anymore. It's Rand Carthon's Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, look, Henry is a great talent. Whatever if he stays in Tennessee or whatever team he goes to. Miami was a great pick, Farrell. I think he definitely would thrive there. But such a great talent. If he drops into the second round, and like Farrell said, you could start with an Eckler and Henry. Geez, you're so much ahead of the field. I mean, what great value, at that point. So I'm not necessarily a Henry fan, but I've always looked at him in the first round. But when you start drafting and you see Henry fall in the second, mid-second, or even at the end of the second, it's a must pick. I mean, it would be a great value at that point. So, and I don't think wherever he goes, I think his talent will rise above the situation, and I don't think he's going to fall out of the second round.
And if that's the case, if he does go at the end of the second, that's a great start, obviously. But if Farrell's prediction holds true, or not prediction, but if his wish holds true, where he ends up slipping to the early third, then you could maybe start like Eckler, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry. You can go Eckler, Devontae Smith, Derrick Henry. That's it opens up a wide. I mean, it's the FFPC, it's the KFFSC. It opens up a lot of possibilities.
It does, yeah, it does.
Obviously. Jay, you alluded to this earlier. Adam Thielen, one of your favorite players?
Yes.
Now he is a free agent. He is looking for a new home. As the Vikings have released him, Tom Pelissero reported this on Twitter. He's going to be 33 years old this year. He was going to earn almost $20 million in 2023. It was the highest cap hit of any non-quarterback on the Vikings roster. He's going to be able to go into the open market. He has not hit 1,000 yards in 4 years when he went for 113 catches, 1,373 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns. He's only gotten 1,400 yards the last 2 seasons. However, he's been very good in the red zone, 25 red zone receptions. Last year, that was second best in the league, and 5 of those 6 touchdown catches he had were in the red zone. I'm going to ask you about Thielen right now, Jay, where you're hoping he goes to and what you think he can do in 2023. I'm going to ask Farrell about KJ Osborne in a little bit. But, Jay, your thoughts on Thielen, what he can still offer. And bear in mind right now, when he was still a Minnesota Viking, he was going as wide receiver 78 at the 1707. Jay, he's probably not going to be drafted in some never too early drafts. So you can basically get him in the 20th round. I think you probably think there's some value there.
Yeah, I love Thielen. I mean, where you were getting him over the years and drafting him, I liked him because he was always good between 10 and 15 points. he was steady Eddie, and then he'd have his spike games, and he'd give you that. I was really sad to see the Vikings let him go. So where I like him to go and really stick it to the Vikings, I like to see him go to Green Bay.
Yeah, there you go.
I like to see him go to Green Bay. I mean, he'd be a great possession receiver.
Well, and not only that, Jay, but you think about the complementary skills that he has with Christian Watson, and the fact that you can have two young guys in Watson and Dobbs now learning for what they couldn't learn from Devontae Adams, they could now learn from Thielen.
Yeah, definitely tune into those games, those two games, Green Bay, those Green Bay games and Vikings with the Thielen. But yeah, I mean, again, I was disappointed. He's a great possession receiver. I mean, he makes unbelievable catches. I tried to, not almost every team, you don't want too many shares, but he was certainly a target of mine over the years and last year. And he underperformed last year. I have to admit it. I think he's lost a step, and I think that's why the Vikings have let him go. But he's a great route runner. He's got great hands. I mean, some of the best hands I've seen. Unbelievable catches. I think he would be an asset on a team that needs a possession receiver in that 10, 15-yard range. Would be perfect. But Green Bay would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be interesting, and certainly we'll see what his price ends up being at. But there's a non-zero chance of anything, like I always say. Farrell, prior to this, KJ Osborne was a 13th round pick in the Never Too Early tournament. We saw a little bit of a mini breakout from him last year. Now it's basically like that number 2 receiver, probably number 3 option behind TJ Hawkinson. It's his, man. What do you think about Osborne in the 13th round? You want to be in business with him there, but he's going to rise to a point where you probably are like, okay, I'm good on him. And I'll bring this up just real quick, guys. Minnesota was 12. Were they 12-1, including the postseason, in games decided by a possession or less last year? Like, they were in a lot of games, a lot of close games. They ended up winning them. I feel like that is going to regress a little bit this year, and maybe they're throwing a little bit more in the second half than they were than this past year, where they're trying to salt leads away with Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison, so on and so forth. But Farrell, your thoughts on KJ Osborne this year? Because, man, I'll tell you what, wide receiver 62 right now, give me him all day as my wide receiver 5. I might take him as my wide receiver 4 in some drafts too.
Yeah, he is the kind of player, Bulky, that will ruin your entire fantasy season that you'll be facing when you draft him this year. He's a very good, hard-nosed football player, and he'll spend late April in front of the NFL draft, like all of us, seeing the wide receivers that the Minnesota Vikings pluck out of this rich college class of wide receivers. But he's a good player, but he's going to break your heart. He's a spot start, waiver wire.
What about for best ball, Farrell? You're staying away from
no, because it's too infrequent. And we're dealing with a 28 round best ball. Okay, if you want to sneak him in at the end, but with what we're doing with the never too earlies and the 18-man rosters, you're going to need all 18 of them. At least I did last year. I looked at what are my successful teams. Oh, they're the 18 of them where everybody contributed and most everyone stayed healthy, 18-player roster. And I don't think Osborne, and I appreciate him as a football player. Sometimes on the show, I let that push me in a direction that says, okay, we can probably get some fantasy value out of him. From this conversation, no. And in regards to Thielen, I'll point out to you guys and notify Dave Turp, who will be hosting us for dinner, by the way, Balky, after losing his Robert Woods bet, that Robert Woods today signed a $15 million contract with $10 million of it guaranteed. He, too, coming off one of his worst seasons ever, and he'll be down playing for the Houston Texans, and that looks like a very New England thing to do, signing a veteran receiver. Oh yeah, Nick Caserio, right out of the New England playbook, and raised there with all the things that make New England great, starting with Belichick and Scott Pioli and all those guys that taught him the ways to make the move. So yes, these receivers have value. I would just say, if I want to take a gamble, I'll take a look at Thielen in the 18th round, because you know what? If he plays in the NFL this coming year, there'll be a game where he'll catch 2 touchdowns.
Farrell, what about you mentioned the Woods thing? Does that signal the end of Brandon Cooks there, or are they unrelated?
I don't know. They're unrelated.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Because I think, I saw the Woods thing. I'm like, okay, I'm not excited about it. I mean, it's something. No. Then I'm like, oh, what about Brandon Cooks? I don't know. We'll see what happens there going forward. I know Nico Collins is going to have a role there for sure. Farrell, speaking of receivers, Michael Thomas might be extending his contract with the New Orleans Saints, according to New Orleans football's Nick Underhill. So he agreed to a restructure this offseason, and still his roster spot was in danger. Now, if he's on the Saints roster on the third day of the new league year, which is coming up, I believe, at the end of next week, early the week after, I think is what it is, then he is fully guaranteed as far as his salary goes. He barely played since he had that Bafo 2019. He's 30 years old. Derek Carr is going to be there this year. We know Olave is excited to have Derek Carr. What about Michael Thomas's role in New Orleans? Does he stick there? And if he does, what are your thoughts on what kind of output you can expect from him this year?
It's a good role for him. And if he drops in the area where you could grab Lockett last year, I like him. He's the kind of receiver that will respond. You remember Michael Crabtree and all the great things he did with Colbert? Mm-hmm. This is the kind of work that you could get. Of course, if I want a emerging receiver in that offense, I'm going to go with Rashid Shaheed because I really like this player, and I think that with Carr's accuracy and that player's ability, athletic ability, and his, I thought he was much taller than 6 feet tall. He plays much taller than that. He's got ability to high point the ball. I really like Carr coming to town with what he can do with Rashid.
Jay, we have been ignoring you. I'm not ignoring you, but we don't. Here's the thing. Listen, the viewers come. They want to know more about Jay Reid. They know you're successful. They know you've had a tremendous career in high-stakes fantasy football. What I want to know, and we'll kick things off with your interview here, how would you rate your season in 2022? Scale of 1 to 10, 0 being bulky. It was the worst season I've ever had in fantasy football. 10 being bulky. I can't imagine it could ever be better than this. How was 2022 for you, man?
I think 2022 was a 7 on a scale from 1 to 10. FFPC, we brought home our usual winnings, enough to play again with some extra winnings, but we really lit it up at the KFFC. It was our second year there. Brought home 5 championships, including 1 big payback championship. We got the feel of it the first year we went there. We kind of bombed out a little bit. But moving forward, I think we're part of the system now. We know how those guys, which is a different gang than the FFPC draft. That's some of the best in the country in the KFFSC. Small community, small family, love it. Farrell puts on a great show there. But
thank you, sir. But
I'd say basically a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10, and that's on the Jay Reid scale, Farrell.
And so if he gets to 9 out of 10, I'll spend most of the spring writing him checks. We're already banging out his trophies. He got to see one of them I have a picture of him longingly fondling his trophy that he received. We had to basically go over there and separate him from the trophy because we didn't think we would have it any longer. He would try to sneak out with it. So, Jay, you've been a good champion. You've been a tough player. Of course, everybody knows the story of your first trip to Kentucky and how you were physically
ended up in a hospital.
And, you walked in, the odds on you making it to Las Vegas after we sent you home from Kentucky were like 200 to 1 against, and there you were. And we were all so proud of you. You're a great player, and we're not surprised if you get better every year. But that's an honest assessment, man. If I'd had the kind of year you were having, I would basically hire someone to throw me a parade, and I would call it a 10 out of 10. So good.
Well, I didn't want to bring it up with that excuse for the first year.
No, it's when you can barely stand, you can. And people should know that are listening to the show. When you can barely stand, it's difficult to draft. When you can't see the board, it's difficult to draft.
I'll say this. Jay, I think you did the KFFSC a favor, right? Because if you go in to year 1 of the KFFSC and you and Scott crush it, and everybody's talking about like the year after, like, great, chasing the helmet just dominated. Beginner's luck. I don't know. One of them had vertigo the whole weekend, and they still So
Thank
like
you for
I think
pointing that out,
that's
Bucky.
the thing. It's like if you bow out, I think that's good for the contest. But
Yeah.
man, if you guys had your normal year and you're basically in the hospital, you can't even see straight, and you guys crush it. I don't know what would have happened to the KFFSC. So thank you for waiting till year 2 to crush it.
A quick throw out to Jeff Joaquin and Bednar and a couple of others, but it was real interesting in looking back on this that everyone had a different idea as to what the malady that Jay Reid was dealing with. You know,
Really?
Yeah. So I dispatched Bednar and Joaquin to the drugstore, and they had a conflict as to what they should get. And then I told them what to get, and then somebody else chimed in. In other words, we have enough over-the-counter products to treat any issues that you would develop at the KFFC.
And then Khan and Laser and Team Shocker just use them all recreationally to get rid of them the rest of the week.
And you know, the Shocker said, well, he should have some bourbon. You know, that's what their answer was to everything. But, you know, the man could barely walk. And then the next night we're getting ready to draft. And there he is standing there. And it was a fantastic experience. And Jay Reid, you're a soldier of many, many definitions of the word. So
not only that, guys, but the rumor that I had dinner with Danny Mueller the night before and that he poisoned me to reduce the competition.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, the next day, that rumor was going around too. And poor Danny was like, he was fine until he had dinner with me, you know. So
Danny told me that he would never do that in Kentucky, only in Vegas. So like that was the thing. I'm like, okay, well, Louisville, Danny's above that. Vegas, I don't know.
Well, I do want to add a caveat to you guys. I said a 7 out of a 10. It would have been a 9 if not for that canceled game between the Bills and the Bengals.
Okay. There you go.
Now, you know, it's water under the bridge. That's the risk you got to, you know, that you face when you play this game.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a ton of Bills and Bengals, and we were ready to light it up in the FFPC. Okay. And it didn't happen. So, I mean, if they'd have played that game, I'd be sitting here. I mean, it'd have been a 9. Absolutely.
7, 9, whatever you call it. It was a great year. And
it was a great year.
So think back to that year. Tell me a guy that you really consistently hit on, because I facilitated some of your drafts, starting with the Super Bowl party.
Mm-hmm.
I watched your drafts. We talked about your drafts on the podcast. Who was a guy that you really hit on? Not necessarily an obvious guy. And who was the one guy that kept you from having that 10 out of 10 score? Or was there?
We hit on Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, there you go.
We had him in several leagues, and in all those leagues, I think brought us to a championship. You know, he was responsible for bringing us there. And I think the Raiders had started him in a preseason game, and it was so odd. It looked like they were just showcasing his skills.
It was the Hall of Fame game. It was the first one.
First one. You know, they didn't care if he got hurt or anything. And a lot of people got off of him. We didn't. You know, I mean, we recognized the talent. I said, well, if they do trade him, you know, he's still a great back. So I'd say Josh Jacobs. I mean, he's going in the 3rd round. I don't understand in KFFC, Farrell.
Yeah, I don't understand either, but I can't sue anyone over it and their mistreatment of the Raiders. I that was one of the oddest conversations, you know, because we don't want to come on here and use the power of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hours pulpit to berate anyone for nonsensical thinking. But by damn, we got close with Josh Jacobs, and we pointed out it's not a bad thing to let your running back run the ball. To let him return a kick. You know, he's probably wanted to show his teammates he could return kicks. Football is still fun for these guys, and that's when you're having it. And sometimes we need to watch with our eyes and not try to overthink situations that we see on the field.
Jay, last year's de facto 101 was Jonathan Taylor in the majority of leagues. He is going right now in the Never Too Early FFPC tournament at 108. How have you guys handled him in Kentucky? How are you looking at him at the 108 right now in leagues? Is that a bargain for him?
Well, in Kentucky, it's a little bit different drafting than the FFPC. The wide receivers are going to go early, and it's no fault of Jonathan Taylor. He wasn't going in the 1st round because a lot of good receivers pushed up into the 1st round, which pushed him into the 2nd round.
You're talking about this year or last year, Jay?
This year.
This year.
Yeah, this year's last month's draft. I'm talking about 2023. So, I mean, who's the quarterback there? I mean, Matt Ryan. You know, I just can't get I just can't get behind him right now. I mean, if he falls, he's certainly a value. But I think there's other value picks in that first round than him. Me picking him at 108. Especially with the quality of receivers that are out there.
Quality receivers are what I want to talk about. You've got two receivers that I did not draft much last year. I got on Devonta Smith a little late. I never was particularly interested in drafting T. Higgins. They're going close into the second round, early FFPC drafts. I continue to prefer Smith. I think I might be missing something with Higgins. Which one do you like, Jay?
That's a tough one. I like to get shares of both. I mean, they're both great players. I mean, if I had to pick one, I would lead Devonta Smith. And the reason for that, A.J. Brown is obviously your long ball guy in Philly. They go up to him long 2 or 3 times. But Devonta Smith seems to be the chain mover. He works the middle of the field. He works the sideline well. It looks like it's Jalen Hurts' go-to guy. And if he continues, look at the Super Bowl, look at leading up to the Super Bowl, the games he played in. I mean, Devonta Smith, was tearing it up with not necessarily touchdowns, but with the catches and the yardage. And I think that's going to continue. And I think that hookup between Hurts and Smith is only going to get better as the years move on. So based on that consistency of points, now T. Higgins is going to have his big games. Okay. But I think consistently, for fantasy football, for drafting, especially in high stakes, I think Devonta Smith would be the choice for me there.
Jay, I was, and we were talking with Theo Greminger on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show about a month or so ago from the GOAT District, and he said that not only is Hockenson his number 2 receiver, or number 2 tight end, beg your pardon, he thinks that Hockenson is going to go as the number 2 tight end this year. And he was for a while. However, he has slipped back now to tight end 3. He's going at the 303, about a half round now behind Mark Andrews. I think the Todd Monken hire in Baltimore had something to do with that. But your thoughts on Hockenson at 303? Do you feel like FFPC drafters are drafting Hockenson at his ceiling in the early third? Or is there room for improvement for Hockenson to not only hit that draft value, but actually exceed that draft value this season?
I mean, for me, I think he's being selected at his peak right now at where he's going. I mean, I would not draft him there. I would rather wait a round or two. And there's other tight ends there like Dallas Goedert. Mm-hmm. I would wait and get the value there and possibly stack with Jalen Hurts, which, by the way, Farrell, we pulled off in 3 leagues last month in the KFFC. We
gotta love the stacks.
With that stack. So, I mean, he had a good year. Thielen's gone, so there's a case for that. But I'd still rather, when it comes to the tight ends, would like to wait and look for value in those in not necessarily the middle rounds, but maybe 5th, 6th round, and grab a good serviceable tight end and maybe pick some receivers or get that quarterback there where he's going. So
I'm very thankful for Hockenson because we don't have to discuss Irv Smith anymore. So, but you, Jay, I think you alluded to something I'd like to get to here. Let's take you talked about how a running quarterback, a quarterback that can beat you with the legs, and we know that Hurts had big first halves in passing, and then in the second half, it would be a different type of thing. And at the end of the game, great fantasy football point scoring. I wonder if Justin Fields, now with DJ Moore, the kid out of Memphis, the smaller receiver, Balky, what's his name? That has been there for a couple years, catches 70 passes every year, won't score a touchdown at Chicago. And then my beloved Chase Claypool.
Darnell Mooney, are you talking about?
Yeah, there you go. That
Mooney. Guy. Okay, all right. I didn't realize he was that small.
He's small.
Okay, all right.
He's not small like Devonta Smith, but okay. Here's my question.
What? You're ripping on Devonta Smith.
Try to keep up, Balky. You've not been taking any of the Jay Reid Red Cross kit. You should be on top of your game. Try to keep up. So, all right. So, listen. So, you got these 3 receivers. we've shown at Philadelphia, even with a running receiver, you can support two big fantasy scorers as well as the tight end and Goddard. Do you see that happening for Fields? And if that's the case, why don't you've already said you some quarterbacks you're going to put him in front of. How high would you draft him? Would you take him in the 4th round? Would you feel good enough about stacking him with those other guys? Because Claypool you can get for a steal. You're going to have to pay for more. The kid from Memphis that Balky can't remember, that neither can I,
5'11", 170. So I guess he is that small. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He's little.
Yeah.
That's the story. Jay, what are you going to do with Fields?
I said that earlier. I mean, before this trade.
Say it again. I had to go upstairs and get my phone charged.
I think you did. I mean, before this trade, I would have waited on Fields. I would have tried, went for a Burrow or Herbert first. But now, because of this trade, I don't think you can pass him up in the 4th round. And he may.
Well, what does it look like for those other two guys then? Who's going to be the two?
It'd be right in those other two be right in the same area. Maybe Herbert around later, but I think Burrow will be in the 4th round along with Fields.
No, I'm talking about the receivers. I want to know those.
Oh, the receivers. I would not stack Fields with DJ Moore because it's going to be too expensive a price to pay for DJ Moore.
Do you like
some of the Mooney? Yeah, would be a good stack.
Komet? What about Cole Komet?
Cole Komet, again, like I said, waiting on tight ends versus Hawkinson.
Okay.
Getting some value. I think those two, Komet and Mooney, would be good stacks in some of the later rounds. But I would not do that. I would not stack with DJ Moore.
I wonder if Cole Komet can even find the end zone during warm-ups. I wonder if they let him even walk in.
Okay, hold on. I have to bring this up right now. So Cole Komet is tight end 13 right now.
Yes.
He caught 0 touchdowns in 2021. Yes. But he caught 7 of them last year.
Yes, but it was very, very late. It was very, very difficult. It was very, very meaningless.
But 7 of them, though. But 7 touchdowns.
For best balls, that's fair enough. I stand correct.
All right, I will say this.
I'm suffering. I'm suffering. You just can't get over that 0. Remember?
The 0 is bad.
Dave Turp tells us you couldn't get over that 0 with Sanders, and it burned him, and so maybe it's burning me with Komet.
Yeah,
I will say this real quick about Cole Komet. He is coming up on his 4th season in the NFL. The highest receptions he's ever had and yards he's ever had was the year he caught 0 touchdowns. So there's something to be said for that. There is something to be said for that 2021 year.
He's a very, very good. He's a very, very good player on a team that's got some challenges. Maybe things open up for him. Maybe he's a player I'll take a late. But man, people overpay for him every year.
Yeah, quick Komet story. We knew Theo in Vegas last year. Loved Komet, so we were stealing Komet left and right. Everybody before Theo could get a shot at him, because we knew that he would get a little upset. But all fair, love, and war.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, like, if you steal him once and Theo Greminger sees you in another draft, he's got to understand, like, okay, I want him,
he's got to go up.
I got to leapfrog Jay and Scott at this point, so that's on him.
That's why we pay the big bucks to get a team, is to frustrate Theo.
Yeah. Jay, you've drafted several teams in Kentucky already this year. You've been drafting for the last, 2 months ago is when you started, basically.
Yes.
Can you give our viewers and our listeners any advice on like what's the things to remember for drafting early and the mistakes to avoid?
Oh man. So I'm giving advice to, is it like high stakes players, or giving advice?
Yes,
first time player.
I would frame it like this: somebody that loves fantasy football, that can't wait till the summer to draft, that wants to draft right now. They've never done it before. What are the tips that you would give them to not only have competitive teams but really successful teams?
Okay. Well, since you're drafting early, what I would do is the first 10 rounds. Look at Farrell. He's really tuning into what I'm saying right now.
The edge of my seat, my friend.
Yeah, the first 10 rounds, I would build a pat team. And what I mean by that, a starting lineup, a solid team in the first 10 rounds. Get your quarterback early, get your tight end a little bit early. Make sure you have a starting lineup in the first 10 rounds. Then the last 10 rounds, you'd fill that in with depth. Now that sounds, like chalk, but hit your rookies. that you like, depending, and you'll see where they go if you're drafting after the rookie draft or before the rookie draft. Hit your rookies to fill in with the depth, take your shots, and then maybe some players. We've talked about them. Mooney. Those type receivers, Claypool, maybe fill in with some of those in the last 10 rounds that are going to perform. Will be on the field. So it gives you the best chance to compete, because you really are so much unknown when you're drafting so early. We got so many trades to go, so many cuts to go, so many injuries to go. But if you get that pat team, players that that are stable on teams that pretty much aren't going to be traded, and DJ Moore just broke that rule, tonight. But for the most part, and that's an example of how things can change quickly. Get that starting lineup. Don't wait on that tight end. Don't wait on that quarterback. You'll be competitive somewhat, because really, if you hit that tight end, that quarterback, and that wide receiver, you have a good chance to win it. If not, at least make the playoffs. So that would be my advice. And also, I'll leave you with that for some first-time players. We get into that wide receiver field. Don't go by the rankings so much. Some people take it as gospel. You might have a player that's ranked 2 or 3 spaces above another wide receiver, 2 wide receivers. You don't know which one to take. What I always do is, okay, don't go by the rankings. Who's the quarterback? What quarterback is throwing to that wide receiver? When you ask yourself that, the decision's easy, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets easier. Two-Packer said it best, Balky. If you draft a team by ADP, you'll have an average team.
So Two-Packer said that. I said that on my show last night, but I attribute it to you. So you got the credit.
The Two-Packer. That's the original Two-Packer.
All right, so I'll have to say it next week and bring up Two-Packer. But Jay, you bring that up, and I'll tell you this: over the last 2 or 3 years, when I've been drafting early like this, and quite frankly, even when I'm drafting late, I always use ADP to kind of understand where players are going. But if it comes to my pick, and I'll say, okay, so this is the quarterbacks that running backs that usually go here, receivers, tight ends, but these are the players that normally go here. And if I don't like any of them, I'll go down, sometimes like a round and a half, and I'll be like, what is that guy doing down here for ADP?
Exactly.
There's no reason he should be. I'm taking him. I'm jumping everybody else. I'm taking him right now. And I have never, ever, that I can think of at this moment, regretted a pick that I made based on liking a player a round or a round and a half later, rather than going with some stiff at ADP that I hated. I've never regretted it.
A good point, Balky, because high stakes players, we speculate. Okay. We don't follow the ADP.
No.
First time players and players maybe in their first and second years, they tend to follow the ADP.
What I love about drafting in the Never Too Early Best Ball right now, and what I love about our event on Super Bowl weekend, is we get to draft these rookies ahead of where we even know they're going to play. And sometimes you get a bonus. Sometimes the destination of the rookie can spell very little opportunities to play early in the year. You see him come on later. It's a mixed bag of what you get, but it sure is a lot of fun. So I want you, Jay Reid, to talk about some of the rookies. It doesn't matter what position. We've got a pretty good idea of who the top 5 wide receivers are, at least who the NFL thinks they are. Now, we are so loaded at tight end with depth. You asked who you were talking to in the last question. I want you to think right now that you're sitting at the bar. You're not drinking a lot because you're not that kind of guy. You got a little Pepto-Bismol on the side, and you're sitting there and you're trying to look at Petri and Larson, and you're talking to them about tight ends, and you want to get them off. You want to get Larson off Mo Alley Cox. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to talk to him about rookies. And, we're talking about drafting Thielen. There's so many wide receiver rookies that are coming into this draft. It's just a tremendously talented offensive draft. You go and tell us the rookies that you drafted at Super Bowl weekend.
Okay, well, I have to give this up to my teammate, Scott Connor. As you know,
he's
widely known. I have to give him some kudos here. He is so knowledgeable with rookies. He's the #1 de facto dynasty player, I think, in the country. Plays like 80, 90 dynasty leagues, if not more. He is my teammate. We played in Kentucky a month ago. So he targets the rookies, and I learn a lot from him. So what we did as a team, we targeted 2 rookies. As you know, we had 9 drafts. We got 4 shares of Kenny McIntosh out of Georgia, and we got 4 shares of Devin A-Chain out of Texas A&M.
Mhm.
Okay, and we like both of those backs because not only are they good runners, good slanting runners, they have excellent hands, and they catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. And that's what you want. These are the type of rookie running backs that you want to add to your teams. Like I said earlier, in the later rounds 10 through 18 or so, in the event they hit, or will have some kind of role at least in third down possessions or situations. Because as the season goes, you're going to have a lot of injuries, and these guys can step up and get you 8, 10, 12, 15 points on any given week. So we took chances on more, but those were the most shares that we had of those 2 backs.
Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead, Jay.
now A-Chain, there's rumors or mock drafts out of there that I think Denver may target him, the Broncos, and you don't know for sure. But just today they cut Chase Edmonds, so that makes it even more possible. I mean, they could be targeting A-Chain, but they may bring in a veteran back, maybe like Kareem Hunt or someone like that as well. So those are the 2 rookies that we targeted, and we were successful at least almost 50% of our leagues that we obtained them.
Darren Larson is still leaning into Mo Alley Cox. Don't you have a tight end for us? Don't you have a tight end to help us out?
In a rookie tight end?
Yeah,
Not
rookie
necessarily.
tight end.
Rookie tight end? It has got to be a rookie tight end?
Going to be drafted this
No,
year.
I'd rather take some tight ends later. I like Njoku.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's not a rookie. He's been in the league.
I know.
A few years.
All right. Let me pin this down right now, Jay. Michael Mayer or Dalton Kincaid? Who would you rather have as far as rookie tight ends this year?
Mayer.
Even though Kincaid tested better than him athletically at the combine, I guess this is more of a philosophical question because Mayer was not a good tester at the combine, but we kind of knew he wasn't going to be, right? But you believe the film with Mayer is going to shine through, right?
I think so, but again, guys, when we draft, I'm not even targeting a rookie tight end. They tend not to perform in their first year.
Right.
There's so many other tight ends later that I would rather choose, and you're going to get them in a later round, and in some leagues, I think you could pick them off of waivers. So there's. It's just a wasted shot. Now I'm looking from the fantasy football aspect, not the talent, the pure talent.
This
aspect.
may be the year that the rookie tight ends are given the opportunity that they can hammer out for themselves in the selection process, because anyone that you talked to in fantasy football last year, what did they tell you? If you don't have one of those top tight ends, you're in a hell of a rough shape. And that's because there were just some non-performers at the position that couldn't keep pace with, I'll tell you, I like Musgrave, the kid out of Oregon State.
Absolutely. I am team Dalton Kincaid. I know he had that back fracture last year or whatever, but man, I loved it. I love him in a Packers uniform, quite frankly. But I look at the RA, last 3 years, I've been big into the RAS scores from the combine. I think we saw the report that 80% of all NFL players in the league currently had an RAS score of great or elite or high or something like that. It's highly predictive, right? And then I looked at the RAS scores for the tight ends this year, guys. It's unbelievable. Michael Mayer is probably going to be the first tight end selected in the draft. He was 16th among relative athletic scores this past year. You had the kid out of Old Dominion, Kuntz, I think. Kuntz, is that his name? What's his first name? Zach? Is it Zach?
Yeah.
Okay. 10.0. 1,029 players previously to this, dating back to the 80s or whatever it was. He got a 10.0, number one of all time. And by the way, there was a ton of other tight ends that tested out of this world for the relative athletic score. It is an insane class this year. I'm with you. I think that some of these guys are going to be disrespected by us in drafts, and you might be able to pick them up off the waiver wire. I love Musgrave Farrell. I like Sam Laporta out of Iowa. Not a lot of people are talking about him. I think that guy is going to be really good from the get-go. We'll see. I could be wrong. Been wrong once or twice before. Jay, let me ask you this. We've been talking about Scott Connor quite a bit this episode. is he still the guy that you partner with the most? Because I know you partner with a lot of guys now in high stakes. Is Scott still the partner that you have the most stake in your fantasy leagues this year?
Look, guys, I am so fortunate to team with two great players, only two, okay? Two great players, but not only they're two great players, they're two great people. I mean, I am blessed to have both of them as teammates. Yes, Scott Connor, Scott Connor and I, this is our 7th year in the FFPC together this year, and it will be our 3rd year in the KFFFC. Like I said earlier, Scott brings unbelievable knowledge on the rookies, early drafting that we do, his calculations, his percentages, all his stats are really impressive, and that surely helps us, particularly in the later rounds in our drafts in Vegas and the KFFC. And I'm so fortunate to have him with me. The other needs no introduction. It's Danny Mueller. I mean, one of the best players in the country. Again, so fortunate to team with Danny again this year. We teamed for the first time last year. The knowledge and experience that he brings to the table is just overwhelming, unbelievable. I mean, I've been playing a long time, and I'm still learning from him.
Balky, Jay is the Miley Cyrus of fantasy football. Just like everybody wants to sing with Miley. I mean, she's with David Byrne. She's doing Sinatra songs. She did a thing the other night.
Well, hold on. Miley Cyrus partnered with David Byrne on a song?
Yeah,
I didn't even know this.
But no, they did the Let's Dance. They did the Bowie song at New Year's Eve. But everyone wants to perform with Miley. And then it's the same thing with Jay Reid. He's the Miley Cyrus of fantasy football.
Yeah, with Danny, yes, we will be playing in high stakes leagues, big paybacks in the FFPC. We did 2 last year. We're going to do 2 again this year, and a slew of main event teams. But it's I keep it 50-50 split. I keep it the same with both guys. Last year we did, Scott and I did 24 leagues in the FFPC and KFFSC, and Danny and I did 24 leagues in the FFPC. And we look to do the same thing again this year, though we may add some because we had some extra winnings. Okay. So we're going to throw that back in there, especially in the KFFC. We're going to play some more main events, Farrell. We only played, I think, 1 league last year. So we're going to do more of those. So looking forward to that. 2 great guys. We're already, again, I've already drafted with Scott, and I'm in almost weekly contact with Danny Mueller, and really looking forward to a great 2023 season with both of them.
I'll tell you this, and by the way, we got to get Scott Connor on this show. Scott Connor at Charles Chill FFB, FFB on Twitter, from Destination Debbie Trades in 5 Dynasty League Football. So everybody, we all know about Scott Connor. We'll get him on the show. Danny Mueller, I have to tell you, Farrell, when you guys were out to dinner, or no, maybe you weren't out to dinner on Sunday night, when we had the Sunday night draft, the sunset, the bourbon turn, sunset at the bourbon turn. Okay, so you were around for that. So I drafted from the 4 spot in that league, and Jay and Danny, I can't remember where you drafted. It was either 1 or 2, but you told me before the draft started that because I was drafting at 4, you're like, this is where all the value is going to fall, Balky. I'm telling you, I've seen it all weekend. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, Jay, like that's cute, but you don't know how all these guys are going to draft. So I listen, I respected you, and like I took it like, okay, Jason. I went first break. I go use the restroom. Danny Mueller comes to me and says like, oh, you're getting all the value falling to you at 4 all weekend long. It's happening to you again. I'm like, God, these guys are really in tune with each other. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't my best team. I should say this. If it wasn't my best team all weekend, it was my second best team. I bow to you. I don't know how you knew it. You and Danny both knew it. Like, it was insane how good that team ended up being. I think I lost in the championship game because I had a really bad week. But you guys are on a different level than I was, because I didn't understand how you were seeing it, but you saw it and it came to fruition, man. I
remember that draft, Danny. And every time you picked, both Danny and I would look at each other and go, shit. He's not coming back.
You chose your position to draft, Bucky. You bet on your position and you chose your position to draft. And wiser than you're claiming to be.
And the other crazy thing about that was like another KFFSC legend, Ralph Chavon, was at 3. I'm like, how did Jay and Danny know, like, Ralph is going to let this Ralph doesn't let value fall to anybody. And somehow I ended up making like I was like, oh my God, it turned out like, and Ralph had a good draft too. Like, it wasn't, he had a bad draft. I looked at my end. I'm like, son of a gun. These guys knew what they're talking about the whole time. It was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. In the same vein, where you looked in your crystal ball before that draft, Jay, Farrell's going to ask you to look in your crystal ball for 2023.
Mm-hmm. Jay, you know, you're a very positive guy, and I appreciate that in you. And I feel a little guilty asking such a positive guy this question, but I want to know who the player is, at least early on, that you're going to fade, a guy that you don't want to be in business. And then if you'll share with us your must-have player, it doesn't have to be a top draft pick, but just someone that you really want to have as we move into the March and April drafting in the FFPC, KFFSC.
I think for me, and Scott and Danny doesn't know this yet, so it could be a fight. But
they're watching the show.
Yeah, for me, I think it's Michael Pittman. I mean, last year he was going at the turn, I think, second and third round. All the high stakes greats were drafting him and moving him up on the board, and I didn't buy it. I stayed away from Pittman, and now I think last month he dropped to the fourth round. So I think we're going to fade him. And for the same reason, I mean, if Matt Ryan is indeed the quarterback there, I mean, how much does he have left in him? I think we did pick up one share out of 9 leagues, but I think Pittman is definitely one I'm going to fade. Who we're targeting? 2 players. I mean, we love wide receivers, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. And they're continuing to move up. And it was hard as hell, Tron. We got one share of Chris Olave, and we had to fight to get that. He was just going so high. And that was before Derek Carr is going there. So I think Olave is going to continue to move up. Is certainly someone that we will be targeting, as well as Garrett Wilson. And that's another quarterback possibility, because is Rodgers going to retire? Is he going to stay with the Packers? That seems unlikely. Or is he going to go to the Jets? If he goes to the Jets, we got 2 shares of Garrett Wilson last month. We're hoping that certainly that I think that offense will improve as well. So those are the guys we're targeting. 2 wide receivers. I know they're high picks.
No, they're good picks.
Okay,
but you have not shared your distaste for the Pittman player with your 2 partners.
Scott kind of knows. Danny might be a little bit surprised.
He'll be surprised because Pittman, and as Balky points out about 7 touchdowns for the tight end at Chicago. Pittman quietly caught 99 balls last year. So
he had 141 targets.
Yeah, well, that's okay. He'll get them again.
He'll get them again. 141 targets. I mean, he only got 99.
And I'm thinking
4 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah, but Jay, 99 catches in the 4th round, that's hard to beat. That's all I'm saying to you. Let's keep examining that one.
I think there'll be some digression there, but
yeah, it could be. He could drop to 80. It'd be a terrible situation to have a receiver catch 80 balls, but that's a whole nother conversation.
I'll tell you a guy who there's no digression. There's no digression. No digression, no dropping. Jay Reid at Packers153 on Twitter. High stakes fantasy football player. According to your Twitter, see, I underestimated this. 22-time FFPC main event and Football Guys League champ, plus Kentucky. Man, you're at like 30 plus league championships.
Yeah, about that. I didn't count the ones before I teamed with Scott and Danny.
But I'm counting them because you still want them. You still want them, Jay.
So I'm up around 30, north of 30 a little bit if you go back all the way to 2010. Since I've been playing high stakes. So
the champion of the Draft Sharks Invitational in 2020, one of the big payback defending champions that you can take on if you want to battle Jay Reid at Kentucky this year in Louisville at the KFFSC. KFFSC.com is where to register for that. You and I, we're Green Bay Packers fans. Jay, I love bringing a fellow Packers fan on tonight. Cannot thank you enough for coming on short notice. God, what a fun hour this was, man. I always like talking shop with you. Good luck in all your leagues this year. I'm sure we're going to talk again soon, especially when drafting season really heats up coming up in May and June. I'd love to pick your brain again. Thank you so much, Jay.
My pleasure, guys. It was great to be here. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jay. Jay Reid, ladies and gentlemen, At Packers153 on Twitter, Jay Reid, one half of the Chasing the Helmet team. And Farrell, we learned a lot tonight.
We did.
Maybe you are on opposite ends with Jay on Michael Pittman, but that's okay because we can work through it.
We can work through that.
Yeah.
What a fine ambassador for high stakes fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
And it's everyone that engages with Jay at the event always has a good time, and we will always talk about his misadventures in his first year here. But as sick as he was, we were the ones that were really shortchanged by the fact that he wasn't in the room, and that's what we try to do, is to have the right kind of people in the room, and he certainly is a person that loves fantasy football for all the right reasons. So we just look forward. It's one of the reasons we look forward to being at Planet Hollywood or being at Caesars, Southern Indiana, to draft live. And he'll draft a lot online as well. You'll compete with Jay Reid wherever you're drafting in either contest.
2021, I'll never forget it too, because Jay was going to be one of my guests when I do the live KFFSC show every year. And then I found out from him that he had to go to the hospital the night before. And like, I know Jay was really upset about not being able to draft, obviously, that weekend. And he ended up, I believe he did draft on Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. At least one of those days he ended up drafting. Sunday, but I'll tell you this, he was so upset about not being able, he felt like he was leaving me in the lurch. He's like, I'm really sorry. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. Just recover. Yeah. Everybody wants to hang out with you and draft and talk fantasy football with you. Don't worry about coming on the show. We have you on again. And now we've had him on multiple times since then. So it's good stuff. I think the biggest thing I need to bring up here, KFFSC.com, we have at least 3 draft masters available right now, including one that only has 4 teams, 4 spots remaining in that, including, and then the other one, the big payback play-in, that's going to be a slow draft that's going to start as soon as it's full. All these leagues, it's going to cost you less than $100 to join, and the payout's really good.
Yeah, get involved with those, and then we will be publishing our schedule for the second of our Sweet 16 championships.
I got to get on that.
Should be up Sunday or Monday. This one is the Run to Daylight, and that will begin here in March and move through the Kentucky Derby. We'll probably draft once a week, 8 divisions, 96 teams, $5,000 grand prize, $200.
KFFSC.com is where you can pay attention to all the updates at KFFSC official on Twitter. Farrell, thank you so much. Remember, no show next Friday because I have some duties with one of my other jobs for the madness of March going on. So you and I will chop it up with Todd Miller, Scoundrel.
No way.
On Wednesday night, we're gonna talk to him about the hardway draft. We're gonna talk about the never too early stuff with him Wednesday at 10/9 Central. My friend, I will talk to you then.
This Wednesday, Balky.
This Wednesday. You got it. Thanks, Farrell. Enjoy your weekend. KFFSC.com is where to register for those draft masters, and then be paying attention coming up this weekend on either Sunday or Monday. You will have the opportunity to join the Run to Daylight Championship, something that I won a couple of years ago. I really want to get the title back. I think Kevin Williamson is the defending champ of that, who is another tremendous player who you've seen on this show before as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up our show tonight. Apologies, but we could not get to the emails. I promise you we'll get to all the emails again on Wednesday, including stuff about Devontae Adams, Breece Hall, Kyle Pitts, and Lamar Jackson. Shout out to Jay Reid, Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you. As I just alluded to with Farrell, no show next Friday, so we will have a show on Wednesday. This Wednesday, 10/9 Central, 12-time FFPC league winner and hardway drafter. You know him as Scoundrel in the draft rooms. It is Todd Miller. He's going to join us to talk about that hardway draft, his thoughts on what's been going on in the Never Too Early tournament, how to get a leg up there. That is this Wednesday at 10/9 Central. In case you missed it, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown was live at 10/9 Central on Tuesday night with 2022 FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament $25,000 champion John Terry. He's back to try to repeat this year. We had him on, talked a lot of draft philosophy on how to draft really good teams early, and then his thoughts on some players. rotoviz.com/podcast or youtube.com/FFPC fantasy in case you want to rewatch that. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network will go live on Thursday night at 7/6 Central, not only on the Better Sports Network app, which is free in the Google Play and the App Store, but we'll go live on the FFPC YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook page like we did with Shane Hallam this past Thursday. We will do it again this Thursday. If you love Dynasty, you're going to love this show. Jordan McNamara, you hear him on the Football Guys Dynasty Show with Chad Parsons. He is going to be my guest co-host for 2 full hours on Thursday night at 7, 6 Central. Win $25,000 in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament. Win $5,000 in the Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball Tournament at myffpc.com right now. That's where you want to go, myffpc.com. Use the knowledge that you learned from Farrell Elliott and from Jay Reid this evening to assimilate that into some really good Never Too Early teams right now, myffpc.com. We didn't get into a ton of Dynasty stuff tonight, but I know that we did with Shane Hallam. And if you're itching, you're scratching that itch with Dynasty, do it at myffpc.com. Picking up some of these Dynasty orphans we got. Yes, they're reduced prices. No, they are not bad teams. There are plenty of really good teams there that can be had for championships this year. myffpc.com is where to go for that. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, share the video, and get notified anytime we are going live, which we will again next Wednesday on this channel and next Thursday on this channel for more high-stakes fantasy football. It's your home for high-stakes fantasy football on the HSFF Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
All right, so one other thing, shameless plug here before I let you go. One of my other jobs, I have a terrestrial radio afternoon show here in Northeast Wisconsin. The local minor league baseball team here in Northeast Wisconsin is the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers. They are the high A affiliate of the Milwaukee Brewers. We are my radio station that I work for, good partners with the Timber Rattlers. And they have something called a food fight every single year. A food fight is they invite people to send in their recipes for something they want on the concession stand menu this coming year. My recipe that I submitted is one of the 5 finalists, which would be tremendous if I got an actual sandwich on the menu at a minor league baseball team. It would be awesome. It is a fried chicken sandwich topped with Wisconsin cheddar cheese and Wisconsin Door County bacon and cherry sweet and savory jam on a grilled sourdough bread. It's a fantastic thing. Like the feedback we got from it has been tremendous. It's a very delicious sandwich. I would really appreciate if you could go to the website for the Timber Rattlers and vote for D, selection D on the food fight. It's real simple. I'm be honest with you. I've told a lot of people to do this. It takes less than 15 seconds. timberrattlers.com, timberrattlers.com. Look over to the right side of your screen. It's going to say food fight down to 5 finalists. Click on that link, and in the first paragraph, there's going to be a bolded hyperlink that says at this link. That's where you vote. Just click on that and click D for the show sandwich. That's the name of it, the show sandwich. We would love it if you voted for us. It would mean a lot to me. I get to throw out the first pitch of the game. The thing gets on the menu for the entire season, and I get free tickets to the game. I get to enjoy the sandwich at the stadium. And I'll tell you what, I know this is a national podcast, but if anybody's ever in Northeast Wisconsin, I'll happily take you to the game, treat you to one of these sandwiches if you can help get us the win. timberrattlers.com, and then vote for D, the show sandwich. I would certainly appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We will be back with you not a week from today. We'll be back with you on Wednesday with Scoundrel Todd Miller here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks so much for